Hi, this is a short introduction to old school solo. This is a set of solo rules written towards old school essentials, but usable with pretty much any of the sort of basic expert style games, like Labyrinth Lords, and any other retro clones in that style. So what you get now, first of all, you'll notice that this one is quite a bit longer than many of my other sort of old school OSR style solo rules. Runs about 40 pages, probably about nearly 10,000 words, I think. But it actually, most of it is supporting information, and it all really comes down to four tables, which you'll see in the uh, in this video. So a little introduction. If you're familiar with solo play, then you don't really need it. Then an example of play, and that first. Oh, sorry. Let's get back to where we were. The first example of play really only uses the yes no oracle, and there's something where because I'm a solo character here, I'm dividing numbers encountered and treasure by seven, which I cover later in the book. So then I go on to how you deal with closed questions, and the oracle here has different levels of granularity. So you get this basic 1 to 3 no, 4 to 6 yes, which is Game Master's been using that for years. You then get the typical no and yes, but sort of oracle, but then you get this more sort of adaptive one, which is kind of best case scenario, good outcome, bad outcome. That is not as closed as yes, no. If you answer a question with a no, then it's just a dead stop sort of thing. These ones, worst case scenario, best case scenario, they almost you don't have to put in odds so much because if you're in a really bad situation, the worst case scenario is logically not going to be much better than the situation you're in now because things are already going bad. Um, you don't have to bother putting odds on that. Whereas if you use the straight yes no oracle and you're in a really bad situation, if you want to know something good's going to happen, the chances are going to be very small. So you're adjusting it anyway. So it's a little bit more kind of self-adapting. And then we get fortunately, unfortunately, which still splits on a 1 to 3, 4 to 6. And the thing about fortunately and unfortunately is that it automatically demands a narrative answer. You cannot answer a closed question with fortunately and unfortunately without adding more information on the end. Fortunately this happened, unfortunately that didn't happen. It has to have some kind of narrative context. So then we get sample play 2, which starts to introduce the word pairs or word groups, which you'll be familiar with from many oracles. Uh, so this is how you deal with open questions, and open questions fall onto these two tables. Or you can treat it as one big table where there's 10 columns, so you can roll a d10 and a d20, or you can be selective and choose questions which fit your situation. For example, if you were overhearing a bishop talking, you might choose divine and talk. Roll on those words, and you'll get a pair. If someone was trying to was drew out some plans, and they were going to tell you about an adventure site, you might want to roll on the place thing of the column. And if it was a necromancer's tower, you might roll on the sorcery and the place, and you're combining the words. So you've got a little bit of an ability to kind of zoom in on a topic. So you're less likely to if you want to know about the wizard's tower and you rolled a d20 and you got stop family, it that doesn't tell you anything about the wizard's tower. But then if we would go on So that would become fantasy, and where was uh, family on that was 9. Um, so moat. So fantasy moat. So that immediately suggests to me that it's a moat. The tower is surrounded by this moat with some kind of monster in it. Maybe you know, something with massive tentacles and things. So a kraken in the moat. That immediately gives me something I can work with, which. So maybe people don't know that much about what's in the tower because it's got this monstrous moat around it. Um, so you, by having these kind of tightly focused domains, it allows you to specialize your answers. Now, I also use this where I build the outline of an adventure, where in this paragraph here, uh, what I do is I start with a couple of words, and those words didn't suggest much, so I add a third word, then I add a fourth word, then I add a fifth word, and the string of words I ended up with was tower, mystical, reverse, feud, tower. And so the tower suggested my destination, reversing the feud, kind of maybe that suggested to me it was a long running feud, which the bishop I was talking to uh, wanted to end the feud. The mystical told me uh, that it was a magic user's tower. Sorry, my string was mystical, reverse, feud, tower. That's it. I stopped at 4 words. Um, so by building these little strings, I could discard any words that really didn't fit. I could keep rolling for more words until I had something that really fired my imagination. Another little sample of play, which introduces the next set of rules I was going to talk about. And then we get on to the specialist tools. Now these are little micro tables. It's a D6, but with only 4 entries, and you're using only 4 entries, so you've got things that are more common, things that are less common. So you can kind of create a bias or more of a themed table. Um, and you create these on the fly as you play. And there's a little example of the one I used in the game. Now, three things is an improv technique where as soon as you think of, say, an NPC, you try to imagine three things about them. And in here I've done this NPC. He's got stooped posture, arthritic knuckles, and half moon spectacles. And those little facts, I can immediately kind of picture that NPC. And as soon as you start putting some details on an NPC, they become more memorable. So you're more likely to remember their place in your story. And the nice thing about the three things is you can then, if something becomes more important and your character's a focus goes on that thing, you can then create another three things, which on whatever you're focusing on. Um, so as with this particular NPC, when I looked more in their face, I come up with garlic breath, dripping nose, and bloodshot eyes. So you know, you can keep zooming in and zooming in until you get to the level of granularity and detail that you really like. But three things are really really quick to think of. You try it, and next time you imagine a place, even if you open a drawer, what three things are the first three things that your eyes fall on when you open the drawer? They're just really really quick. Now, the next bit is about dealing with conversations, and this refers back to the Muse table I was telling you about, where you would use the talk and then an additional column. Um, and but if you can hear one person, you would just take those two your columns. If you could hear both sides of the conversation, then you would you use the talk column for both sides um, to get the tone of voice and the how animated it all is for both speakers. And then there's an example of that as well. Now, plot twists. Now, this comes directly from my OSR rules because it works really, really easily. Roll a d6 for each column, join the two halves of the sentence together. So if I roll a 3 and a 4, I would get an organization hinders the hero. And then so at the top of each scene, you would maybe sort of roll for a plot twist. If you get one, then you would you think, okay, how does this organization hinder my hero? My hero is working for the church, so that is the most logical organization. So there's something. Maybe they turn around and say, "Oh yes, we've got to end this feud, but you can't kill the wizard," which then makes your life much more difficult. Uh, then this explains, how that table works, and I talk about time and sessions and how many characters, how to deal with multiple characters, and going into world building, and then notes. And these are the little forms that I've been suggesting recently in my books, where most of your game notes go in this big area. At the end of the scene, you write just a one or two sentence category in the bottom bit, and any really big questions, world building questions, or things which have repercussions, you put them in this thin column here, and then you can deal with those at the end of the session. If you have to make an off the cuff ruling during your solo session, you can jot that down in here and then either check it or decide that's now a house rule. So that is stuff to deal with after the session. The big area is where your notes go, and the bottom is just a summary of you. So if you want to come up to speed with your game, you can just read these little summary boxes for the last few sessions. That should get you back in character. Now I'll talk about saving throws and hit points, and then on to how to run a module, and I'll give you 3 different methods for running a module with examples, and then some little bit, an end piece about soloing. So that's it. That's the entire book. 41 pages, but 2 of them are sort of just cover and credits. Okay, thank you for watching.